Hello, and welcome to your week 5 video. I wanted to touch base on a few of the things that we're working on for week 5. So let's go ahead and touch base on where we are in our syllabus. I am in the student preview mode so that hopefully this looks as though you would be seeing it when you're in Blackboard. So once we go into our syllabus, I'm going to go straight down to week 5 and walk through our learning outcomes this week. So we have 4 learning outcomes that we're going to be doing as we work through chapters 8 and 10. So the first one is that the students will identify critical elements of narrative and biographical writing. So those are the major types of writing that we're going to be looking at. And those are chapter 8 is narrative writing, chapter 10 is biographical writing. So those are your connections to these chapters that you're reading. Then you will evaluate current classroom placements for instructional procedures leading to growth in writing, specifically in narrative and biographical, but that will be your discussion board topic. Number 1, your critical elements of narrative and biographical writing is going to connect to your interactive notebook. And then again, number 2 is going to connect to your discussion board. Number 3, then you're going to, as we focus on the narrative writing, specifically personal narrative, you're going to take a watermelon personal narrative story and turn it into a seed story. And we're going to walk through that here in just a little bit. That will connect to your student writing piece number 3. And then number 4, you're going to continue implementing a writing assessment and progress monitoring plan for a small group of students in your classroom. So the previous week, you guys worked to develop an assessment notebook of sorts, the conference log, so that you would be able to work with a targeted group of students to build their writing skills. And so you're going to continue that. So number 4 is just a continuation piece as you work through the rest of the semester. So if we go back and we get into our weekly content for week 5, here you will see our discussion board topic for week 5. Again, make sure that you're posting and then you reply to each of the 2 colleagues that are in your class with you. So we're looking at biographies and narrative writing. But I want us to kind of this week take an approach or a closer look to ELL students in writing. So what are some strategies that you can glean from either of these chapters? So when we're looking at narrative writing and biographical writing in chapters 8 and 10, what are some strategies for those types of writing that could support ELL students in your classroom? And then share a little bit about what ELL students in your classrooms what does their writing look like? What does support for their writing look like? Does it look different than the other students in the classroom? What do they not have support? So talk a little bit about that. So that is going to be your discussion board that relates to our second learning outcome. Then we have our interactive notebook that relates to our first learning outcome. And this is the same rubric that is in each week that we have an interactive notebook edition. So if you look here, narrative writing and biographical writing have their own place on the rubric. So for the narrative writing piece of your interactive notebook, you need to make sure that you define narrative writing. The narrative writing elements are identified. Those are plot, setting, characters, theme, point of view. Those elements are defined. And those elements are represented with some sort of visual, some non-linguistic representation, and that your narrative devices are identified. So those are different than your narrative elements. Those are your narrative devices. So you're going to do those for your narrative writing section of your interactive notebook. Then your biographical writing, same thing. You're going to define biography. What is that type of writing? 4 types of life stories and biographies are identified. So in your interactive notebook, you have those 4 types of life stories that are identified. They are represented visually, and examples of autobiographies are also defined. This information for narrative writing and biographical writing are directly from your textbook. So you'll be able to pull those resources from there. So you're simply adding these pages to your interactive notebook as you have it built already. So the third learning outcome is we're talking about our small moment stories, or our watermelon and our seed stories. So I've got a short little video here. I think it's about 6 or 7 minutes, but I've got a short video here that explains what a small moment story is. So really, in a sense, if you're thinking, when we're writing a narrative or a personal narrative, or when our students are writing, we want them to really hone in on one specific part of an event. So, for example, we could write about the upcoming holiday for Thanksgiving. So if we're writing about Thanksgiving, that's a huge point in time. Even that day, if we write about the whole day, is a large point in time. So that's our watermelon, is maybe Thanksgiving. But when we think about it, we can really pick out a seed from that watermelon to target our personal narrative. So it may be that I want to write about preparing the grocery store visit. Could be a story in and of itself, just go to the grocery store to prepare for Thanksgiving. I could take a seed, small moment story and write about desserts. So I could write a nice little personal narrative about the dessert options and how it looked and smelled and tasted and all of that. So in a sense, you are just taking a large watermelon story, a large point in time, and you're narrowing it down to a seed, just a small piece of time within that watermelon. So I have here a small moment organizer for you that you don't have to use. You're not going to have to upload it, but it's just something to help kind of think about and visualize what it means to take a watermelon story down to a seed story, or to take a watermelon story to a small moment story. So this is something that you can use as a resource with the students in your classroom. You can use as you're getting ready to write your own personal narrative. It's absolutely up to you. But it's not going to be part of what you upload in to turn it in. So just so you know that. I think it's about ready. So here we have our big idea. So this is where I could write, my Thanksgiving. And then small moment here, maybe I could write a small moment seed story about the grocery visit. Another option could be my desserts. Another option could be like the cleanup. That's always an event in and of itself. So those are some ideas and just a quick little resource that you can use when you're thinking about what your small moment story could be. Here is the rubric for your personal narrative piece. And again, this is just a reference for you as you're getting ready to write. So you're going to take a watermelon story down to a small moment seed story. Make sure that you include those narrative writing elements: plot, setting, characters, theme, point of view. And the topic is really anything you choose. Be creative. It's not something that you are having your students write or that you're writing from an elementary student perspective. So please refer to this rubric as you're building your personal narrative. So it should be evident that you have narrowed down your story from a larger context into a seed small moment story. And then again, that you have those narrative writing elements. Your plot is present and easily identifiable. Setting, characters, theme, and point of view is the same. So reference that as you're getting ready to complete your personal narrative piece. And then here is your Turnitin link as you are ready to turn that in. Now I also want to go back and talk last week about, in week 4 we did some, my apologies. In week 4 we did some work on poetry, and I just want to share a little bit of clarification and show you our rubric here. Well, okay, let me go up here and it will be uploaded. My apologies. Oh, you know what? I bet it's in week 3. Let me go to week 3. Oh, there we go. Okay. Our poetry writing rubric. So as you are writing your poetry piece, you're connecting it to the 6 traits of writing. So the 6 traits, again, are ideas, organization, voice, word choice, sentence fluency, and conventions. And then you're going to choose a type of writing. A type of poetry writing. So formula, free verse, syllable and word count, rhymed verse. It can be any of those that you're comfortable with. And you can look at in your book in chapter 7 for some more specific examples or more information about each type of those. So you are also going to be sure that once you choose the type of poem, that you also work to incorporate poetic devices, such as alliteration, comparison, onomatopoeia, personification, repetition, and rhyme. So again, any way you want to submit this, any type of poetry that you want to write is just fine. It's from your perspective, not the perspective of your students or elementary students in general. But make sure that you are incorporating some of the 6 traits and poetic devices. So if you're looking at the rubric here, you can see that you have identified, or I'm able to identify, the type of poetry, formula, free verse, syllable and word count, and rhyme verse. And then you have some sort of evidence of using at least 3 of the 6 traits. So if it's something that may require some additional explanation, then you can always add an extra paragraph or a little bit of writing at the end of your poetry piece so that you can explain some of the traits that you used. But for the most part, I should be able to see at least 3 of them in your writing. Poetic devices, so you've used at least 2 of those in your poetry writing piece. And then so in your reflection, you may have to explain again some of those 6 traits or your poetry type or your poetic devices. So if you feel like you've chosen your type of poetry or your 3 traits or your 2 poetic devices, and if you feel like any of that is unclear or questionable, that I may not be able to identify it, this is where your explanation is going to come in. And then again, that your writing is engaging, it's grammatically correct, it's easy to read, it doesn't have distracting errors. So that is going to be your approach for your poetry writing piece. Again, this is in week 3, but I did not have the rubric in place for you. My apologies for that. So that is available for you in week 3. So as we wrap up and we get back into our week 5, make sure that you are completing your interactive notebook, your discussion board, and you complete your watermelon and seed story personal narrative writing piece. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great week.